Hey there, beautiful souls, and welcome back to Uncovering Your Inner Power. I'm your host, Jill Ripley, and today I'd like to have a conversation that I wish more women were having. If you're approaching menopause, moving through it, or you've already entered this new chapter of life, I want you to know something profoundly relevant and important. You are not broken, you are not weak, you are not losing yourself or your mind. In fact, I believe something much deeper may be happening. Most conversations about menopause focus on what we're losing. We're told about declining hormones, hot flashes, sleepless nights, brain fog, mood swings, aching joints, and a body that seems suddenly unfamiliar. And while all of those experiences are very real, trust me, I've experienced all of them. I sometimes wonder if we've become so focused on managing the symptoms that we've forgotten to ask a much bigger question. What if menopause isn't simply a biological transition? What if it's also a spiritual one? What if this isn't your body betraying you? What if it's your body inviting you to a completely different way of living? Today, I'd like to explore that possibility together. Over the past few years, I've been navigating menopause, just like millions of women around the world. And if I'm being completely honest, there were moments when I wondered what was happening to me. I remember asking myself, am I going to be okay? Will I ever feel like myself again? Will my sanity remain intact? My body was changing, my emotions were changing, and at times I hardly recognized myself. Like many women, I sought answers. For me, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy became an important part of my journey. And over time, it helped me begin feeling more like myself again. I find myself currently at a place that the intensity has softened a bit, and I can finally take a step back and look at things with a little perspective. And that's when a profound question began to surface. What if menopause is more than a biological transition? What if there's a deeper invitation hidden within it? And what if this season of life isn't just changing our bodies, but asking something of our souls as well? I don't pretend to have all the answers, but the more I've reflected on that question, the more I've come to see menopause in a very different light. And that's the conversation I'd like to explore with you today. Sometimes I find myself wondering how differently women experienced menopause hundreds or even thousands of years ago. Not because life was easier, it certainly wasn't. Women worked incredibly hard. Many faced tremendous challenges, but they also lived much closer to nature. Their days were shaped by the rising and setting of the sun. Meals were made from whole foods. Movement happened naturally throughout the day. Communities were often close knit, and life unfolded at a slower pace. Now, compare that to the world we live in today. Artificial light keeps us awake long after sunset. Our nervous systems rarely get a chance to fully rest. We're surrounded by endless notifications, constant news, social media, overflowing schedules, processed foods, environmental chemicals, financial stress, and the unspoken pressure somehow to do it all while smiling through it. None of us intentionally created the world we live in today. We simply inherited it and learned to adapt to it. We're simply trying to navigate it. And while researchers continue to study how factors like chronic stress, sleep disruption, nutrition, and environmental exposures may influence menopause, I don't think it's unreasonable to wonder if our bodies are carrying way more than they were ever designed to carry. Perhaps some of what we're experiencing isn't simply menopause. Perhaps it's menopause layered on top of decades of accumulated stress, physical, emotional, and environmental. One of the things I've noticed, both in my own life and in conversations with other women, is that menopause often brings much more than physical symptoms. It brings questions, questions that perhaps we've been too busy to ask until now. Who am I now? What truly matters to me? What parts of my life no longer feel aligned? What do I want to do in the next chapter of my life? For many of us, our younger years were spent looking outward, building careers, raising children, supporting partners, caring for aging parents, meeting expectations, and trying to keep everyone else happy. Many of us became so good at taking care of everyone around us that somewhere along the way, we stopped asking ourselves what we need. Then something shifts, almost mysteriously. Somewhere around menopause, many women begin asking entirely different questions. Not what do they need, but what do I need? Not what will everyone else think, but what feels true to me. Those aren't simply hormonal questions, they're soul questions. And perhaps that's one of the greatest gifts that this season offers us. I've been thinking a lot about this lately. What if menopause isn't the end of something? What if it's the beginning of inner authority? A while back, I recorded an episode about the wisdom of the crone, not as the harsh stereotype our culture has often portrayed, but as the wise woman within us. The woman who has lived, loved, lost, healed, and gathered the kind of wisdom that can only come through experience. As I've been reflecting on menopause, I keep coming back to that conversation. Perhaps this season of life isn't about becoming less. Perhaps it's the very doorway into that deeper wisdom we've been growing towards all along. I'll put the link to episode 43 in the show notes if you're interested in going back to check it out. For most of our lives, we're taught to seek answers outside ourselves. We're told who we should be, how we should look, what success looks like, how productive we should be, how much we should accomplish, and how much we should sacrifice. But eventually, many women reach a point where that external validation simply doesn't satisfy them anymore. Something inside begins whispering, there has to be more. I don't think that's something to fear. I think it's wisdom. It's the quiet voice we've often ignored because life was simply too busy. Perhaps menopause isn't taking our power away. Perhaps it's helping us remember where our power has been all along, and that's within. As many of you know, I've spent years on my own healing journey. I've worked through trauma. I've questioned old beliefs. I've learned to set healthier boundaries. I've discovered the incredible gift of meditation. And I've found myself spending more time in nature, slowing down and creating space to simply listen. As I've moved through menopause, I've noticed something unexpected. I've become less interested in proving myself to the world and much more interested in understanding myself and trusting the quiet wisdom that dwells within all of us. I am less concerned about fitting into everyone else's expectations and more interested in living authentically. I wasn't trying to become someone new. I think I was remembering who I'd always been underneath all the roles I'd played. For me, menopause hasn't simply been about changing hormones. It's been about changing identity. And that hasn't always been easy, but it has been incredibly meaningful. Perhaps some of the uncomfortable symptoms menopause brings aren't simply something to endure. Perhaps they're invitations to begin paying closer attention to ourselves and to the remarkable body that has carried us through every season of our lives. One thing I've learned is that our culture teaches us to fight almost everything. Fight aging, fight wrinkles, fight fatigue, weight gain, and even time itself. But what if fighting isn't always the answer? What if our bodies aren't the enemies to conquer? What if they are wise companions trying to get our attention? When my body asks for more rest, can I listen? When it asks me to slow down, can I trust it? When it no longer tolerates the pace I once maintained, can I honor that instead of criticizing myself? Perhaps menopause isn't asking us to become less. Perhaps it's inviting us to become more honest, more compassionate, more authentic. One of the reasons I chose the name Uncovering Your Inner Power for this podcast is because I've come to believe that real strength doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from learning to trust the quiet wisdom that already lives within us. Perhaps menopause is one of life's invitations to stop searching everywhere else and begin listening to ourselves. Sometimes it simply takes enough life experience, enough heartbreak, enough healing, enough change to finally become quiet enough to hear it. Perhaps that's the true invitation of menopause, not simply surviving it, but listening to it, because sometimes the greatest wisdom doesn't arrive when life becomes easier. It arrives when life becomes quiet enough for us to finally hear ourselves. If you're walking through menopause right now, I hope you'll remember this. Your body is not failing you. It's speaking a new language, one that asks you to slow down, to listen, to nourish yourself, to set boundaries, to spend time in nature, to breathe, to trust yourself, and to honor the wisdom that has been quietly growing within you all along. This season may ask you to let go of who you have been, but it also offers the extraordinary gift of discovering who you were always meant to become. Perhaps menopause isn't a crisis. Perhaps it's an awakening. Perhaps it isn't the beginning of the end. Perhaps it's finally the beginning of coming home to yourself. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If this episode resonated with you, I would love to hear your thoughts. What has menopause been teaching you? Not just physically, but spiritually. If you know another woman who could use this reminder, please share this episode with her. Together, we can begin changing the conversation around menopause from one of fear and loss to one of wisdom, transformation, and hope. Until next time, remember, your inner wisdom has been with you all along. Sometimes it simply takes life's greatest transitions to help you hear its voice.